streets are empty, save for the faint rustle of the wind pushing against forgotten papers. The weight of the silence is almost tangible, a sound louder than any noise I've ever known. Above me, the sky is a blanket of muted gray, its heavy clouds filtering what little sunlight dares to penetrate this desolate landscape. The air itself feels charged, thick with the unspoken sorrow of a city that once brimmed with life. I step cautiously onto a cracked and uneven road, my boots stirring the fine layer of ash that coats everything in sight. This isn't just any city. It's a ghost city, a hollow shell of its former self. The buildings here stand like mournful sentinels, their facades scorched and crumbling, their windows shattered into jagged teeth that gape at the emptiness. Once symbols of human ingenuity, they now serve as grave markers for a civilization brought to its knees by its own hubris. As I walk further into the city, I notice how still everything is. Not a bird chirps, not a single leaf rustles. Even the wind, when it moves, seems to tread lightly, as if unwilling to disturb the solemnity of this place. The silence is oppressive, but it is also telling. It speaks of a catastrophic event that unfolded here, a nuclear apocalypse that arrived swiftly and without mercy, leaving nothing but desolation in its wake. The nuclear event that claimed this city, and so many others like it, was the result of a conflict that spiraled out of control. What began as political posturing escalated into something far darker, far deadlier. The warnings had been there for decades. Stockpiled weapons, rising tensions, and the grim calculus of mutually assured destruction. Yet, when the unthinkable finally happened, it caught the world off guard. Cities like this one were obliterated in an instant, their populations incinerated or left to succumb to the agonizing effects of radiation. It's hard to imagine that this place was once alive, a bustling metropolis with its own rhythm and heartbeat, where people lived, worked, and dreamed. Now, it's nothing but echoes and shadows, a frozen tableau of lives interrupted. Ghost cities like this have become the unintended monuments of our failure, reminders of what happens when humanity's ambition outpaces its wisdom. I pause at what seems to have been a main intersection. The cracked asphalt is littered with debris, shards of glass that glint dully in the overcast light, fragments of metal twisted into abstract sculptures, and remnants of what might have once been a vehicle, now unrecognizable. A street sign lies toppled on the ground, its faded letters barely legible. It points to destinations that no longer exist, names that feel like whispers from another lifetime. Above the intersection, a broken traffic light hangs precariously by a single wire. It swings gently in the breeze, its red light permanently frozen. A final command to stop, long after there's no one left to obey. I can't help but wonder about the people who once walked these streets. Who were they? What were their lives like? Did they have time to comprehend what was happening when the sirens began to wail? Or was it over too quickly for them to even feel fear? The city's outskirts offer some clues. Abandoned vehicles line the roads leading into town, many of them with their doors ajar and their contents spilled onto the ground. Suitcases lie half-packed, their zippers frozen in mid-motion. Children's toys, stuffed animals, miniature cars, a tiny pair of shoes sit untouched, eerily out of place in this wasteland. These are the traces of lives interrupted, of plans that were abandoned in the face of unimaginable terror. The buildings themselves are no less haunting. Once towering symbols of human achievement, they now stand as hollow ruins. Skyscrapers with their upper floors gutted by fire, apartment blocks with their walls blown out, revealing the private lives that were once lived within. Beds unmade, tables set for meals that were never eaten. I find myself drawn to one particular building near the city center. Its facade is scorched, but relatively intact. Its windows dark and unbroken. It looks like it might have been a library, or perhaps a government office. As I approach, the faint smell of charred wood and melted plastic grows stronger, mingling with the acrid tang of lingering radiation. Inside, the air is cooler, and the silence feels even heavier. The floor is littered with debris, fallen ceiling tiles, shattered glass, and the remnants of books whose pages have fused together in the heat. On the walls, faint outlines of murals can still be seen, their colors faded, but their intent unmistakable. They were celebrations of human achievement, scenes of astronauts, scientists, and artists, all of it now rendered bitterly ironic by the ruins surrounding me. What strikes me most, however, is the absence of life. Not just human life, but any life at all. There are no birds nesting in the rafters, no weeds pushing up through the cracks in the floor. It's as if even nature has abandoned this place, unwilling or unable to reclaim it. I walk through the building, each step echoing in the cavernous emptiness. In one room, I find a desk that seems almost untouched. A stack of papers lies neatly arranged, as if the person who sat there had intended to return. A pen rests on top, its ink dried long ago. There's even a chair, slightly pushed back, as if someone had just stood up. The scene is so ordinary, so mundane, that it feels like a punch to the gut. This was someone's life. A life that ended abruptly, leaving behind these small, unassuming traces. It's moments like this that make the scale of the loss feel almost unbearable. As I leave the building and step back onto the street, the silence presses in again. It's not just the absence of sound, it's the absence of everything. No laughter, no footsteps, no voices. The city feels like a vacuum, a place where even memories struggle to survive. And yet there is a strange beauty in the desolation. The way the light filters through the broken windows, casting fractured shadows on the ground. The way the wind moves through the streets, carrying with it the faintest whisper of what was once here. This is a place that demands reflection. It forces you to confront the fragility of everything we build, everything we value. In the grand scheme of things, our cities, our monuments, even our civilizations are fleeting. They can be erased in an instant, leaving behind nothing but ash and echoes. As the day fades into twilight, the city takes on an even more haunting quality. The shadows grow longer, and the few remaining structures seem to lean in closer, as if to share their secrets. What secrets lie hidden in these empty streets? It's a question that will haunt me as I continue this journey. One that I hope to answer in the days to come. But for now, I can only walk forward, into the silence. The ruins stretch out before me like a broken tapestry, each thread a reminder of lives once interwoven. The city seems endless now, a labyrinth of cracked sidewalks, crumbling buildings, and abandoned streets. The silence here feels different, not just heavy, but watchful, as though the city itself is observing my every move. I decide to start my exploration with what appears to be a neighborhood park. Once a place of laughter and life, it now stands as a chilling monument to the past. The swings creak faintly as the wind nudges them, their chains rusted and weak. A slide, its surface warped and blistered from intense heat, juts out of a mound of earth that has begun to consume its base. Nearby, a sandbox is littered with the broken remnants of plastic toys, tiny shovels and buckets, their colors faded but still discernible under the layer of ash. It's hard not to imagine the children who once played here. I can almost hear their laughter echoing faintly, a ghostly sound carried by the wind. Who were they? Did they have any warning of what was coming? Or were their lives snuffed out in an instant? The questions linger as I move toward a nearby bench, its wooden slats charred and splintered. A withered plant grows stubbornly near the bench, its roots pushing through the cracked concrete. It's the first sign of nature reclaiming this place, a subtle but undeniable reminder that life, in some form, always finds a way. The thought is oddly comforting, though it does little to ease the oppressive atmosphere. From the park, I make my way to what seems to have been a shopping district. The buildings here are larger, their facades adorned with faded signs advertising brands and products that no longer exist. A mall stands at the center, its glass entrance shattered, its once bustling interiors now a cavernous void. Inside, the air is stale, thick with the scent of decay and abandonment. The escalators are frozen in mid-motion, their metallic frames covered in a thin layer of dust. Overturned shopping carts litter the walkways, their contents spilled onto the ground. Cans of food, clothing, and toys now rendered meaningless. I pause in front of what appears to have been a children's store. The window displays are shattered, but the mannequins remain, dressed in brightly colored outfits that seem almost mocking in their cheerfulness. One mannequin lies on the floor, its arm outstretched as if reaching for something or someone. Inside the store, the remnants of a chaotic evacuation are evident. Shelves are toppled, their contents strewn haphazardly across the floor. Among the debris, I spot a stuffed bear, its fur singed and its button eyes missing. Picking it up, I can't help but wonder who it belonged to. Was it clutched tightly in a child's arms during those final moments? Or was it abandoned in the frantic rush to escape? As I leave the store, I notice a faint sound in the distance, a soft rustling, almost imperceptible. I freeze, my heart pounding. It could be the wind, but in a place like this, even the wind feels sinister. I strain to listen, but the sound is gone as quickly as it came, leaving only the deafening silence in its wake. The next stop on my journey is a school. The building is small, its exterior scarred by fire and time. The entrance is partially blocked by debris, but I manage to squeeze through. Inside, the air is cooler, the walls lined with faded posters and bulletin boards. The desks are scattered, some overturned, others still neatly arranged as if awaiting their students' return. On one desk, I find a notebook, its pages yellowed and brittle. The handwriting is small and neat, the words written in a language I can't decipher. Flipping through the pages, I come across a drawing, a simple sketch of a house with a family standing outside. Their stick figure smiles frozen in time. It's both heartwarming and heartbreaking, a glimpse into a life that no longer exists. The school's library is a somber sight. The shelves are mostly empty, their contents reduced to ashes or stolen by time. A single book lies open on a table, its pages fused together by heat. The title is unreadable, but the image on the cover, a tree standing tall against a stormy sky, feels strangely fitting. As I leave the school, I notice vines creeping along its outer walls. They twist and curl around the broken windows, their green tendrils a stark contrast to the grayness of everything else. Nature is reclaiming this place, slowly but surely. The thought gives me pause. Does nature mourn the loss of its caretakers, or does it simply adapt and move on? The final stop of the day is a residential area. The houses here are small and tightly packed, their facades weathered but standing. Each one tells its own story, doors left ajar, windows boarded up, belongings scattered across lawns that have turned to dust. One house, in particular, catches my attention. Its front door is intact, its windows still shuttered. Stepping inside feels intrusive, but curiosity gets the better of me. The interior is eerily preserved, as if the family who lived here had intended to return. The living room is sparse but tidy. A couch sits in the center, its cushions sunken and discolored. A television, its screen cracked, stands on a wooden stand surrounded by framed photographs. Picking one up, I see a smiling couple holding a baby, their faces frozen in a moment of happiness. It's impossible to look at the photo without feeling a pang of sadness. In the kitchen, the table is set for dinner. plates and utensils are arranged neatly, and a pot sits on the stove, its contents long gone. The sight is unsettling, a snapshot of normalcy in the midst of chaos. As I explore further, I come across a desk in one of the bedrooms. On it lies a half-written letter, the ink smudged but still legible. It begins with a heartfelt farewell, an apology for something left unsaid, but it ends abruptly, as if the writer was interrupted. I can't help but wonder who they were writing to and whether the letter's recipient ever received it. Leaving the house, I notice the faint rustling sound again. This time, it's closer, more distinct. My pulse quickens as I scan the area, but there's nothing there. Just the wind pushing through the empty streets. As the sun begins to set, the city takes on a different character. The shadows grow longer, and the ruins seem to shift and change in the fading light. The silence is no longer oppressive, but almost comforting. A blanket that wraps around the remnants of what once was. And yet, the questions linger. Who were the people that lived here? What were their final moments like? Did they have any hope, or was it extinguished along with everything else? The ruins hold their secrets tightly, but they also offer glimpses of the lives that once thrived here. Through the abandoned toys, the half-written letters, and the vines creeping over buildings, the story of this city begins to take shape. A story of loss, resilience, and the unyielding passage of time. The faint sound comes again, softer this time, almost like a whisper. Was it just the wind, or something else? The question hangs in the air as I prepare to continue my journey, leaving the ruins behind, but carrying their echoes with me. As I stand amidst the ruins, the weight of it all begins to settle on my shoulders. These remnants, shattered buildings, abandoned toys, half-written letters, are more than just evidence of a nuclear apocalypse. They are the echoes of a civilization that once thrived, dreamed, and believed in its own permanence. Yet here it lies, reduced to dust and silence, a stark reminder of humanity's fragility in the face of time. It's sobering to think that this city, like so many others, was built with the belief that it would last. The skyscrapers, the parks, the bustling marketplaces, each a testament to human ingenuity and ambition. And yet, in the end, all of it has crumbled like sand, undone not by the passage of centuries, but by a single catastrophic event. Looking at the cracked asphalt beneath my feet, I'm reminded of a story my grandmother used to tell me when I was a child. She spoke of an ancient kingdom, its walls so tall and strong that the people believed they were invincible. They forgot to be humble, she would say, and the earth reminded them who was truly in charge. At the time, I thought it was just a parable about pride, but standing here now, I see the deeper truth in her words. Civilizations rise and fall. It's a pattern as old as humanity itself. The difference is that, in the past, the forces of destruction came from without. Invading armies, natural disasters, the slow decay of time. This city and the others like it fell not because of an external enemy, but because of humanity's own recklessness. I walk through the ruins, my thoughts drifting to the lives that were lived here. Each shattered window, each overturned chair feels like a ghostly snapshot of a moment now lost. I can't help but think of my own home, the small apartment I left behind when I began this journey. The way the morning sunlight would filter through the curtains, the sound of the kettle boiling in the kitchen, the familiar creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. It's all so mundane, yet so precious. What would someone think if they stumbled upon my home centuries from now? Would they see the pile of books on my nightstand, and imagine me as a scholar or a dreamer? Would they find the photographs on my fridge and wonder about the faces smiling back at them? The thought is both comforting and unsettling. A reminder that, in the grand scheme of things, we are all just fleeting moments waiting to be forgotten. As I pass by an abandoned playground, I notice a small plaque partially obscured by rust and grime. Scraping it clean with my sleeve, I read the inscription, "Dedicated to the children of tomorrow." The irony is almost too much to bear. This playground, meant to inspire hope and joy, now stands as a monument to broken promises. It makes me wonder, what do we truly leave behind? Is it the monuments we build, the stories we tell, or the lives we touch? And if everything we create is destined to fade, then what is the point of it all? I don't have answers, only questions. Questions that seem to multiply with every step I take through this desolate city. In the distance, I see a tree growing through the cracked foundation of a building. Its roots have pushed through the concrete, its branches reaching toward the sky. It's a sight that fills me with both awe and sorrow. Nature is reclaiming this place, as it always does. But it's not just a story of resilience. It's a reminder of our impermanence. I crouch down to examine the roots, my fingers brushing against the rough bark. This tree, I realize, will likely outlast every structure in this city. It doesn't strive for greatness or permanence. It simply exists, adapting and thriving in the face of adversity. There's a lesson in that, I think, one that humanity has yet to fully understand. Survival isn't about building monuments or conquering nature. It's about harmony, about understanding our place in the larger tapestry of life. But we've always struggled with that concept. We build with the belief that we are masters of the earth, forgetting that we are, in fact, a part of it. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the ruins, I find myself reflecting on the stories I've heard about this city. Stories of families who lived here, of children who played in its parks, of lovers who strolled its streets. Each story is a thread in the fabric of humanity, and yet all of it has unraveled, leaving only loose ends. I think back to a conversation I had years ago with a friend who was studying archaeology. She told me about the ruins of an ancient civilization buried beneath layers of earth. The funny thing, she said, is that they probably thought they were invincible too. But here we are, digging up their pottery shards and speculating about their lives. At the time, her words felt distant, almost abstract. But now, standing here, I understand what she meant. We are all just chapters in a book that no one will ever finish. And yet, we keep writing, keep building, keep dreaming. Perhaps that's the most human thing of all, our ability to hope, even in the face of inevitable decline. As I make my way back to the center of the city, I find myself drawn to a small courtyard. In its center stands a fountain, its once pristine surface now covered in moss and grime. The water is long gone, but the statue at its heart remains, a figure holding a torch, its face weathered, but still proud. The inscription at the base reads, "To illuminate the path forward." It's a bittersweet sight, a reminder of humanity's enduring optimism. Even in the face of destruction, there is a part of us that refuses to give up, that clings to the belief that we can do better. I sit by the fountain for a while, letting the silence envelop me. The questions return, as they always do. What is our legacy? Is it the cities we build, the stories we tell, or the lessons we leave behind? And then there's the hardest question of all. Will we ever learn from our mistakes? As the sky darkens and the first stars begin to appear, I feel a strange mix of emotions. Sadness for what has been lost, hope for what might still be reclaimed, and a deep, abiding awe for the resilience of life itself. We build to last, yet nothing ever truly does. It's a humbling thought, one that I'll carry with me as I continue this journey. But for now, I sit in the quiet, listening to the wind as it whispers through the ruins, carrying with it the echoes of a world that once was. The deeper I venture into the city, the more I feel the weight of its silence. It's not just the absence of sound, it's a palpable void, heavy and oppressive, as if the city itself mourns its past. The ruins, already eerie, begin to reveal secrets that unsettle even my trained eye. In the heart of a residential district, I come across a house that seems almost untouched by the chaos outside. The door, slightly ajar, creaks as I push it open. The first thing that strikes me is how intact everything is. A dining table sits in the center of the room, fully set with plates, glasses, and silverware. A once steaming bowl of soup now holds only dried remnants, its surface cracked and flaking. I approach the table cautiously, half expecting someone to burst in and reclaim their seat. But there's nothing, only the ghostly tableau of a family dinner, interrupted. The sight is almost too much to bear. Did they have time to eat? Or was this scene frozen in the seconds before everything fell apart? On the floor near the table, a pair of shoes sits neatly aligned, their laces undone as if someone had just taken them off. It's such a small detail, yet it carries an unbearable weight. The person who left these here, did they ever make it out? Or were they caught in the chaos, their plans for escape thwarted before they could even begin? The air inside the house feels heavy, as if it's clinging to the memories of those who once lived here. In the corner of the room, I notice a clock mounted on the wall. Its hands are frozen at 7:13, a moment preserved in time. The stop clock seems to scream louder than words could. This was the moment when everything changed. As I moved to the next room, I noticed the faintest flicker of light. For a moment, I freeze, my breath catching in my throat. Is it a trick of my mind, or is there something alive in this place? I inch closer, my footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust on the floor. The light flickers again, emanating from a cracked television in the corner. The screen glows faintly, displaying static interspersed with fleeting images. A face, a hand reaching out, a burst of light. I can't make sense of it, but it's enough to send a chill down my spine. Who turned this on? And why is it still running after all these years? I leave the house, stepping back into the street where the wind has picked up, sending small bits of debris skittering across the ground. The sound is jarring in the otherwise silent landscape, like a whispered warning to turn back. But curiosity drives me forward. Nearby, I spot what looks like the remnants of an evacuation attempt. A long abandoned car sits with its doors open, its trunk overflowing with belongings hastily packed. A suitcase with its lid askew, spilling out clothes, and a stuffed animal. The sight is heartbreaking. The people who packed this car must have believed they had a chance, that they could outrun the inevitable. On the ground near the car, I find a notebook, its pages weathered but still legible. Flipping through it, I find a series of journal entries, each one more frantic than the last. The final entry reads, "We're leaving tonight. I pray we'll make it to safety." The words stop there, leaving me to wonder if they ever made it out, or if they became another part of this city's tragic history. As the sun begins to dip lower in the sky, casting long, ominous shadows, I decide to explore what appears to be a theater. Its grand facade, though scarred and blackened, still exudes an air of former elegance. Inside, the air is damp and heavy, the scent of mildew and decay overpowering. The rows of seats are covered in a thick layer of dust, their once plush cushions torn and sagging. On the stage, a piano sits in eerie silence, its keys yellowed and cracked. Approaching it, I notice something strange. A sheet of music still rests on the stand, its notes frozen mid-melody. Out of curiosity, I press a key. The sound it produces is hollow and off-key, but it reverberates through the empty hall, sending a shiver down my spine. The acoustics make it feel as though the city itself has responded, its silence momentarily broken. Above the stage, a chandelier sways gently, its crystals catching the faint light and scattering it in fractured patterns across the walls. The movement seems unnatural, as though stirred by something unseen. I quickly leave, the sense of being watched stronger than ever. The next building I enter is an office tower, its glass facade shattered, its interior exposed to the elements. The wind whistles through the hollow structure, producing a sound that could almost be mistaken for voices. On one of the desks, I find a family photo. The face is smiling up at me as if oblivious to the fate that awaited them. Beside the photo is a coffee cup, its contents long since evaporated, leaving behind a ring of residue. It's such a mundane detail, yet it feels profoundly sad. A reminder of the life that once thrived here. The office's break room holds a more chilling discovery. A calendar hangs on the wall, its pages curling at the edges. The date is marked with a red circle, accompanied by the words, "Final meeting, mandatory attendance." Who attended that meeting? And what decisions were made in those final hours? The questions gnaw at me as I move further into the building. On the top floor, I find a boardroom, its long table covered in papers and folders. One folder catches my eye, its contents scattered across the table. Among the documents are evacuation plans, maps, and handwritten notes, some of which are circled in red ink. One note in particular sends a chill down my spine. The lights must be turned off manually, no exceptions. The phrase feels out of place, almost ominous. What lights? And why did it matter so much that they be turned off? As I leave the office building, the sun dips below the horizon, and the city is plunged into an even deeper darkness. The only light comes from the faint glow of the moon, casting everything in an eerie, silvery hue. The wind picks up again, carrying with it a distant sound, a creak, a groan, and something else I can't quite place. It's faint, almost like a whisper, but it sends a shiver down my spine. As I stand there, the last words from the office replay in my mind. Who turned off the lights here, and when? The city is silent, but it is not lifeless. As I walk through its broken streets and crumbling structures, I begin to notice signs of nature creeping back in, quietly and persistently, reclaiming what humanity has left behind. The roads, once smooth and meticulously maintained, are now fractured with deep cracks. From these fissures, weeds and grass have sprung up, their green shoots a stark contrast against the gray and black of the asphalt. Moss clings to the walls of buildings, painting them with a muted vibrancy that feels almost defiant. In the hollowed-out shell of an abandoned car, a bird has built its nest. I pause to watch as it flits back and forth, its tiny form dwarfed by the hulking remnants of human ingenuity. The juxtaposition is striking, a fragile creature thriving within a symbol of human progress, now reduced to decay. Further down the street, I come across a stream winding its way through the city. It flows with a quiet determination, carving a path through the debris and rubble. The sound of water trickling over stones is soothing, a reminder that life, in some form, continues. This transformation is everywhere. Trees grow through the floors of empty buildings, their roots splitting apart the concrete as they reach for the sky. Vines drape themselves over shattered windows, their tendrils curling and twisting like the fingers of a patient artist. Even the air smells different here, earthier, fresher, as if nature itself is breathing new life into the ruins. There is a bittersweet beauty in this desolation. The city, once a testament to human ambition and ingenuity, now belongs to the earth, and the earth in turn, is healing it, slowly erasing the scars left behind by the catastrophe. I find myself drawn to a crumbling apartment building, its facade nearly obscured by ivy. Inside, the floor is uneven, warped by the roots of a tree that has claimed the space as its own. Sunlight streams through the gaps in the walls and ceiling, illuminating patches of moss and lichen that cling to every surface. In one corner, I spot a small flower blooming amidst the rubble. Its delicate petals are a vivid yellow, a burst of color in an otherwise monochromatic world. It's such a simple thing, yet it feels profound. A reminder that life finds a way, even in the most unlikely places. As I step outside, I notice the sound of insects buzzing in the air. It's subtle at first, but as I listen more closely, I realize that the city is alive with the hum of nature. Bees flit from flower to flower, ants scurry across the cracked pavement, and somewhere in the distance, the chirping of crickets fills the evening air. This resurgence of life is both awe-inspiring and humbling. It's a testament to the resilience of nature, its ability to adapt and thrive even in the face of destruction. But it also serves as a stark contrast to the fragility of human structures. The buildings, roads, and monuments that once stood as symbols of our power and permanence have crumbled, while the simplest forms of life have endured. I come across a bridge spanning what used to be a river. The structure is barely recognizable, its metal beams twisted and rusted, its concrete supports crumbling into the water below. Yet, along its edges, wildflowers have taken root, their blossoms swaying gently in the breeze. It's as if nature is reclaiming this place, not with violence, but with quiet persistence, weaving itself into the fabric of what remains. The ruins of a schoolyard offer another poignant scene. The playground equipment is almost entirely enveloped by vines, their leaves draping over swings and slides like a natural shroud. In the center of the yard, a tree has grown tall and strong, its branches reaching high above the surrounding debris. I can't help but marvel at its resilience, its ability to thrive in a place that has seen so much loss. As the sun begins to set, casting a golden glow over the city, I climb to the top of a hill for a better view. From here, I can see the full extent of nature's reclamation. The streets are lined with trees, their canopies creating a patchwork of green and gold. The buildings, though still scarred by the apocalypse, are softened by the greenery that has taken hold. Even in ruin, there's a strange kind of serenity. The city no longer feels like a place of death and destruction. It feels alive, in a way that's both haunting and beautiful. I sit on the edge of the hill, watching as the light fades and the first stars begin to appear. The city is quiet, but it's a different kind of quiet now. A peaceful stillness, filled with the subtle sounds of life. As I reflect on everything I've seen, a thought comes to mind. Does nature mourn the loss of its caretakers? It's a question I can't answer. Perhaps nature simply adapts, moving on without us, its cycles continuing as they always have. Or perhaps there is a sense of loss, a recognition of the symbiotic relationship we once shared. Whatever the answer, one thing is clear. Nature will endure. Long after our cities have crumbled to dust, long after our stories have faded into obscurity, the earth will continue to turn, and life will continue to grow. In the face of this resilience, our own fragility becomes even more apparent. We build with the belief that our creations will last forever, but in the end, they are as fleeting as the lives that created them. As the night settles in, I rise to my feet and prepare to continue my journey. The city, though silent, feels alive in a way that I can't quite explain. It's as if it's telling its own story, a story of destruction and renewal, of endings and beginnings. And as I walk away, I can't help but feel a sense of hope, for even in the darkest of places, life finds a way. As I continue my exploration of the city, I find myself increasingly drawn to the remnants of the people who once lived here. These personal artifacts, diaries, photographs, voice recordings, are scattered like breadcrumbs, each one offering a fleeting glimpse into lives that were interrupted, stories that remain unfinished. In a small apartment complex, I find my first discovery. A diary, lying open on a nightstand. The room is sparsely furnished, the bed unmade, as if someone had left in a hurry. The diary's cover is worn, its edges frayed, but the handwriting inside is neat and deliberate. The entries begin innocuously enough. A young woman writing about her day-to-day life, her job at a local bakery, her dreams of opening her own cafe. But as I read further, the tone shifts. The last few entries are frantic, filled with fear and uncertainty. The news says it's nothing, just posturing. But why does it feel like more than that? The bakery was empty today. No one wants to be outside. I tried calling Mom, but the lines are busy. I hope she's okay. They've started handing out evacuation orders. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. The final entry is abrupt. A single line scrawled across the page. If anyone finds this, please know I tried. I closed the diary, my hands trembling slightly. It's such a simple statement, yet it carries the weight of everything she must have felt in those final moments. Fear, desperation, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. In another apartment, I find a photograph tucked into the corner of a broken mirror. It's a family portrait, slightly faded, but still clear enough to make out the details. A father, mother, and two children smile at the camera, their arms wrapped around each other. The backdrop is a park, perhaps the very same one I passed earlier, now overgrown and silent. I hold the photograph for a moment, imagining the lives captured in that single frame. Did they make it out together, or were they separated in the chaos? Did they survive, or are they now just another part of this city's tragic history? The emotional weight of these discoveries is almost unbearable. Each artifact feels like a whisper from the past, a voice reaching out across time to remind me that these ruins were once alive with laughter, love, and hope. In a nearby office building, I find something even more haunting, a collection of voice recordings stored on an old device. The battery is nearly dead, but with a little coaxing, I manage to play them. The first recording is mundane, a meeting, voices discussing quarterly reports and marketing strategies. The second is more personal, a man leaving a message for his wife. Hey, just wanted to say, I'll be home late tonight. Don't wait up, okay? Love you. But it's the third recording that sends chills down my spine. The voice is panicked, hurried. If anyone hears this, we didn't have time to... They said it was safe, but the sirens... Please, if you find this, tell my family I... The recording cuts off abruptly, leaving only static. These voices, now silent, still echo in these empty halls. They are a testament to the humanity that once thrived here, a reminder that this city was more than just buildings and roads. It was a home, a community, a place where people lived and loved. But not all of the artifacts are straightforward. Some hint at larger mysteries, questions that may never be answered. In the basement of a hospital, I find a series of symbols etched into the walls. They are crude, almost childlike, but they seem deliberate, as if meant to convey something important. Circles, lines, and triangles overlap in intricate patterns, their meanings unclear. Nearby, a piece of paper lies crumpled on the floor, its edges burned. Written on it are the words, "They told us it wasn't real, but it is. It always was." The ambiguity is maddening. What wasn't real? And who is they? The symbols and the note feel connected, somehow, but without more context, I'm left to speculate. In another part of the city, I come across a school. The hallways are eerily quiet, the walls adorned with faded posters and children's drawings. In one classroom, a chalkboard still bears the remnants of a lesson, a half-erased equation, a few scribbled notes. On one of the desks, I find a notebook. The handwriting inside is messy, the kind of scrawl you'd expect from a child. Most of the pages are filled with math problems and doodles. But near the end, there's a single sentence written over and over again. Don't forget me. Don't forget me. Don't forget me. The repetition is haunting, as if the child was desperately trying to leave a mark, to ensure they wouldn't be erased, along with everything else. In the gymnasium, I find another clue. A pile of backpacks sits in the corner, their contents spilled across the floor. Among the belongings, I find a small, handheld game console. Its screen cracked but still functional. Turning it on, I'm greeted by a simple message displayed in pixelated text. Game over. It feels like a cruel joke, a bitter commentary on the lives that were lost here. As I leave the school, I notice something strange. A trail of footprints leading away from the building. They're faint, almost imperceptible, but they seem fresh, as if someone has been here recently. The thought sends a shiver down my spine. Could there still be someone alive in this city, wandering its ruins? Or are these footprints a relic of the past, preserved by some quirk of the environment? The unanswered questions linger as I continue my journey, each new discovery adding to the tapestry of stories this city holds. In a small house near the outskirts, I find what appears to be a letter, its edges yellowed with age. The handwriting is shaky, as if written in haste. To whoever finds this, please remember us. We were here. We lived. We loved. We mattered. The simplicity of the message is devastating. It encapsulates everything I felt during my time here. The overwhelming sense of loss, the desperate need to remember, to bear witness. As I step outside, the wind picks up, carrying with it the faintest sound. It could be the rustling of leaves or the creak of a distant structure. But in my heart, it feels like something more. These stories, though fragmented and incomplete, are the soul of this city. They are a reminder that, even in the face of unimaginable destruction, humanity leaves its mark. But the city holds its secrets tightly, and I can't shake the feeling that I've only scratched the surface. There are larger mysteries here. Symbols on the walls, whispers in the wind, and voices that seem to linger just beyond the edge of hearing. Who were these people? What were their final moments like? And what, if anything, still lingers in this place? The answers may never come, but the questions remain, haunting and unrelenting as I continue my journey through the silent streets. The city's central landmark looms ahead, a silhouette against the bruised sky. It's a structure that once must have been a source of pride and identity for the people here. A government building with towering spires that seem to pierce the clouds. Now it stands as a decayed monument, its grandeur lost to the ravages of time and catastrophe. The path leading to it is eerily quiet, the silence broken only by the crunch of debris beneath my boots. The wind has picked up, carrying with it a metallic tang that clings to the back of my throat. Overhead, storm clouds gather, their edges tinged with a sickly green hue. Distant thunder rumbles, low and ominous, as if the city itself is warning me to turn back. But I press on. As I approach the building, I notice strange markings on the pavement, long, uneven streaks that could be the result of heavy objects being dragged. Nearby, a crumpled barricade lies half buried under rubble, its metal frame twisted and scorched. The sight sends a chill down my spine. Was this a point of resistance? Did people make their last stand here, hoping to defend what little remained of their world? The doors to the building are massive, carved from wood now blackened by fire. One of them hangs precariously on its hinges, creaking softly as the wind pushes against it. I step inside, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The interior is vast, with high ceilings that seem to stretch endlessly into the shadows. Broken chandeliers dangle from above, their crystals scattered across the floor like fallen stars. The walls are adorned with murals, or rather, what remains of them. Images of triumph and unity are marred by soot and cracks, their messages of hope twisted into haunting reminders of what was lost. In the center of the hall stands a massive desk, its surface littered with papers and maps. Many of the documents are charred and illegible, but one map catches my attention. It's marked with red circles and arrows, as if outlining evacuation routes or defensive positions. Scrawled in the margins are words that send a shiver down my spine. Too late, nowhere to run. Beside the desk, I find a chair tipped over, its cushion stained with what looks like dried blood. The scene feels frozen in time, as if the person who sat here was forced to abandon their post in the middle of some desperate act. I move deeper into the building, the tension in the air growing with every step. The corridors are narrow and labyrinthine, their walls lined with doors that lead to forgotten offices and storage rooms. Many of them are locked, but one door hangs open, revealing a small room filled with filing cabinets. Inside, I find a collection of records detailing the final days of the city. One document stands out, a report describing an attempt to contain the disaster. It speaks of unforeseen complications and escalating conditions, but the details are vague, as if deliberately obscured. The last line is particularly cryptic. The lights must be turned off before it's too late. The phrase feels familiar, echoing the note I found earlier in the office tower. What lights? And why was it so important to turn them off? The sound of distant thunder snaps me out of my thoughts. The storm is growing closer, its presence felt in the tremble of the air and the faint vibrations underfoot. The building groans as the wind howls through its broken windows, adding to the atmosphere of unease. I ascend a grand staircase, its steps cracked and uneven, leading to the upper levels of the building. At the top, I find a large chamber that must have been a meeting hall. Rows of chairs are arranged in a semicircle, all facing a raised platform where a podium still stands. On the wall behind the podium is a massive symbol, a circle enclosing a series of intersecting lines. It's the same symbol I saw etched into the walls of the hospital basement. Approaching the podium, I notice a journal lying open on its surface. The handwriting is frantic, the words scrawled across the page in uneven lines. We tried. God help us, we tried. But the warnings came too late. They're here. They've always been here. The journal ends abruptly. The remaining page is blank. I look up at the symbol on the wall. Its design both intricate and unsettling. What does it mean? Is it connected to the disaster? Or something even darker? The storm outside intensifies, lightning illuminating the chamber in brief, blinding flashes. In one of those moments, I see it. A shadow moving across the far wall. My heart races as I turn toward the source of the movement, but there's nothing there. Only the flickering light of a broken chandelier swinging above me. The building creaks and groans, the sound echoing through the empty halls like a mournful wail. The storm's fury is relentless now, the thunder cracking so loudly that it feels as though the very earth is splitting apart. And then I see it. At the end of the chamber, partially obscured by debris, is a doorway I hadn't noticed before. It's smaller than the others, almost hidden in the shadows. Something about it feels wrong. I hesitate, my instincts screaming at me to turn back. But curiosity, or perhaps something deeper, pushes me forward. The door creaks open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward. The air here is colder, heavier, as if the weight of the building's secrets is concentrated in this hidden place. As I descend, the sound of the storm fades, replaced by an eerie silence. The walls are damp, their surfaces covered in the same strange symbols I saw earlier. The staircase ends in a small, dimly lit room, its only illumination coming from a faint pulsing light in the center, and then I see it. The journey through this forsaken city has left a weight on my soul that I can scarcely put into words. Every step through its silent streets, every discovery of a life interrupted, has been a stark reminder of the fragility of humanity. The ruins are more than just the aftermath of a catastrophe. They are a mirror reflecting both the heights of our ambition and the depths of our recklessness. Standing at the edge of the city now, I look back at the skyline, its jagged edges silhouetted against a sky that has begun to clear. The storm has passed, leaving behind a strange stillness that feels almost peaceful. And yet, beneath that peace lies the echo of everything I have seen, the remnants of lives once lived, dreams once dreamed, and a world once vibrant and full of promise. The emotional toll of this journey is hard to quantify. Every artifact, a diary, a photograph, a child's abandoned toy, felt like a voice reaching out from the past, a plea not to be forgotten. And these voices, though silent, have a power that lingers. They remind me of the humanity that once thrived here, of the laughter and love that filled these streets before it all came crashing down. But there's more to this story than just loss. There is a lesson here, one that feels as vital as it is urgent. If these cities teach us anything, it's that we must do better. The ruins are a testament to our ingenuity, but also to our hubris. We built monuments to our progress, cities that we believed would stand for centuries. Yet all it took was one moment of unchecked folly, one act of destruction, to reduce it all to dust and echoes. And yet, amidst the devastation, there is hope. Nature's reclamation of this place, its quiet, persistent resurgence, is a reminder that life, in some form, will always endure. The vines that creep through broken windows, the trees that grow through cracked foundations, the birds that nest in abandoned cars, all of it speaks to the resilience of the earth and its capacity to heal. But the question remains, can humanity learn to do the same? As I reflect on this journey, I find myself grappling with a paradox. We are both creators and destroyers, capable of building wonders and unleashing horrors. Our greatest strength, our ability to dream and innovate, is also our greatest weakness. When untempered by wisdom and humility, we live in a world of our own making, and it is up to us to decide what kind of world that will be. Will we continue to build without regard for the consequences, repeating the mistakes of the past, or will we learn to live in harmony with the earth, recognizing that we are not its masters, but its stewards? These are questions that have no easy answers, but they are questions we must confront. For if we do not, the silent cities of the future will only multiply, each one a monument to our failure to change. As I prepare to leave this place, I am struck by a lingering sense of mystery. The city holds its secrets tightly, refusing to yield them fully. The cryptic symbols, the journal entries hinting at truth left untold, the footprints that seem too fresh to be relics of the past, all of it points to something larger, something just out of reach. The silent cities hold their secrets well. But for how long? It's a question that will haunt me as I move forward. A reminder that some stories are never fully told. But perhaps that's fitting. Perhaps the unanswered questions are what keep us searching, what push us to uncover the truth, and in doing so, learn something about ourselves. As I take one last look at the city, its ruins bathed in the soft light of the setting sun, I feel a mixture of sorrow and hope. Sorrow for what was lost, and hope for what might yet be reclaimed. This place, though broken, is not without beauty. It is a testament to the complexity of humanity, a story of creation and destruction, of triumph and tragedy. And though its voice is faint, it still speaks, urging us to listen, to learn, and to do better. The journey ends here, but the questions remain, and perhaps that is enough.